So 2 points you mentioned, which should be interesting to talk about. First of all, immigration. So
Yes.
my dad came from Mexico to the United States, built a better life, right? My grandpa kind of initiated that move originally. However, kind of do see the point of deporting illegals, but I don't agree with the methodology that they're doing.
Yeah.
If you find this guy who's illegal, you run his records, you look at his track record, he's a working guy, he has a family,
Right.
he's just a normal dude, but now if he's committing crimes and causing violence, that's one thing, but
sure.
I feel like just our system is a little broken. I don't agree with just opening it all up either.
Right.
Because you're not a country without borders.
I would agree.
I'm kind of in the middle on that.
So,
how do you feel about that?
I hear what you're saying. So I think that most people would agree that being here legally, as they say, is like that's the only way to do it, right? However, at the same time, the judicial system. So they've basically cleaned out the immigration courts. They've defunded them. They've taken judges off of the cases, and they've basically understaffed that portion of the judicial system. So yes, I agree. Yeah, we don't want if someone's here and they're committing crimes, sure, yeah, we need to address that. But that starts with the bedrock of our country, which is our constitutional system, which guarantees people the right to a trial. How do we know that they're a criminal? How do we know even that they're here, what their legal status is, without going through the process at the courts first? It's due process. So the issue is that they are deliberately undermining the judicial system and basically then saying, if we want to get through all of these tens of millions of immigration cases, then it's going to take so long, we can't possibly get through that many in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, well that doesn't mean you get to ignore due process and the Constitution in the meantime. Search and seizure, seizing people with no warrants. There's no due process when it comes to trials. They're just throwing them right into detainment, right? There is cruel and unusual punishment. They're just taking people and they're deporting them off to places like El Salvador and the mega prisons. So it's like, I think that everybody would agree there's an issue that needs to be solved, but I think following the Constitution sounds pretty good to me, and also being humane. I think that they've kind of taken it upon themselves, the Republicans and the Trump administration, to try and unilaterally solve a problem, and they see the Constitution and sort of the legal constraints as a hindrance to them wanting to fix something, but that's not how the Constitution works. You can't just pick and choose, when you want to follow it. It applies to everybody at all times. So that's a lot of my bones to pick. There needs to be a pathway to citizenship, and I absolutely think that we can do that, but it also has to go through Congress, and that has to be codified into a real law. That's part of the problem, is that we have even under Obama, every president has taken stabs at doing things with immigration. But the next president then can come in and undo it or do it whatever they want to, So it's like every 4 to 8 years, it's just all of this. If we had something that was codified, agreed to, which Congress has come very close to.
Really?
Very
like
close
bipartisan
to.
support?
Bipartisan.
Cool.
It was President Biden within the last few years. There was a Republican senator, I think it was Langford, out of Oklahoma. He created a whole, he was the one spearheading this bipartisan legislation through the Senate, which is notoriously hard to get advancement through, right? They had the agreement, and Trump was literally making calls out of office, because he was not president at that point, making calls to undermine the deal, because the Republicans benefit when there's no solution. Because if the problem's solved, what are they going to run on? How do they divide people, when it comes to immigration? So there's a lot.
Both sides, unfortunately.
Sure, yeah. And I'm coming at it from my perspective, right?
True.
And I recognize, too, there's huge faults with the Democratic Party, right? I understand that. The Epstein list, that's a whole nother topic, right? If there's Democrats in that,
that's interesting.
I don't want them to be in the party, right? This is our party. We're making the party in our image moving forward. And so if there's issues and baggage in the past, we'll take care of that, right? It's like we'll move past it in advance. That's I think the idea.